A month or so ago, we made a little flux spoon for putting flux in your forge welds and using it to forge. And I think I commented at the time that by upscaling that spoon, you could make a cooking spoon or an eating spoon. Well, to go along with your spoon, if you ever got around to making a bigger spoon, sometimes you'll need a fork. So today I thought we would take a look at a very simple fork. It's not going to be exactly one of these. It's going to be something a little bit simpler. Both of these are a little bit more complicated. This one looks like it was made out of 3/16 by 1 inch material, been drawn out to about a 3/16 round and has very long graceful tines on it. This one's made out of 3/8 square bar with a very simple fork on the end. Its real claim to fame is the little ram's head detail here at the end. Just kind of gives a little class. This is more of a campfire fork than a kitchen fork. It's not very fancy, and what we're going to make is actually very simple today. Today's video will be using a piece of 1/4 by 3/4, 10 inches long. Like so many of my projects, this isn't any sacred size, it's just what I chose. I don't have a very specific plan. I have a picture in my mind of what I want to do, and I think I can do it out of this, so we're going to find out what happens. In addition to our piece of material to make our fork out of, we're going to need a hot chisel to split the tines. Probably need a pair of tongs to hold it in, although you could start this as a much longer bar, but at some point I think you're going to have to cut it off. And of course, forge, hammer, and anvil. That's really about it. It's a fairly simple project. We're going to isolate the mass for the fork tines. We're going to draw out a point so that when we split 2 pointed tines instead of having to draw them out completely separate. We'll have to finish them separate, but we'll start them off connected. Split the tines, obviously. Shape them, finish shaping the fork and the handle, or we might rough this out, turn it around, finish the handle, and then come back and draw out the tines. Just kind of see where it's going. Holding on to the tine end with tongs might damage the tine, so it might be better to finish that off last. Just get it all roughed in to start with. Now I'm also going to rough in 2 pieces to start with. I'm going to save one to use later, and we will turn it into a spoon with a matching handle. So if you're doing this, you might want to think about starting 2, making the handles look the same, and then just changing the end between fork and spoon, and it's not as hard to do as it sounds like. I'm just going to step off the amount I want to leave for the tines, or for the spoon if in that case, and use lined up blows between the edge of the anvil and the edge of the hammer, and reduce this to about 3/8 of an inch. In the long run, this is going to taper up the handle. So this is the other piece, and I'm going to step off about the same amount. My goal is that the edge of the hammer and the edge of the anvil line up. It's okay to kind of start in the middle and kind of sneak up on that if you're not sure you can get it right off. And if you mess it up, you'll get a chance to fix it. Just kind of clean that up, make it straight and as even as you can. And that's all we're after in that first step. I think I am going to go ahead and do the handle in first so that I don't mess up the fork tines. And the one for the spoon, the handle will be the same. But I'm not going to worry about it. We're not going to show it today. We're just going to do the fork today. We'll do the spoon later. My main goal now, I'm holding on to the end that'll be the fork, is to just create a graceful taper in this. This isn't going to be a high art, fancy colonial style fork. It's just going to be good, functional stuff with very simple, but hopefully nicely done elements. And one of those is a nice taper. So that's kind of what I'm going for. I think it can be a little wider up here, but that also thins it out, and I think that will make it more elegant in the long run. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Although I'm also going to put a hanging ring on this end. So I'm going to offset this at the anvil and draw that out before I spread this. So these are half face blows, which means the hammer face is half on the anvil, half off, and that drives this bar down and creates a step. Something like that. Now I'm going to draw this out, and this will be our hanging ring. In the long run, I'm going to want this to be a round ring, I think, or round cross-section material. But now I can start thinning this out a little bit, making it just a hair wider. So this will taper now in two directions. It gets wider as it goes up here, but it also gets thinner as it goes up there. That's really very close to all I want to do here. I'm going to finish that tail to make the ring out of. Oh, nice graceful taper here. And I'm going to go to octagon. And I'm going to round it up. I may draw the tip out just a hair more to make a little curlicue on the end. So I'm going to go back to drawing out square just the little end where I want to add more taper. And then I'll go to octagon and then round it up again. That's a much sharper point. I think will make a better little curlicue on the end of this. I'm going to very gently put the little curl on there, just like that. I'm going to offset this at this point a little bit to help with my bend. And then I'm going to start making my curl for the ring. Now this is definitely something that would be easier done over the horn. And I may switch to the horn here in just a second. But you can see we're getting there. Now if you don't have an anvil with a horn, you can use a little piece of tubing or pipe locked in a vise. You can use a mandrel cone, or you can do something else. You don't have to have a ring on this. You could just punch a hole in it if you wanted to. Got the ring does look better if it's actually round. So do your best job to end up with a round circle, however you do it. But you could punch a hole in this if you wanted to and not even put a ring. Just punch, and then you could hang it on a nail next to the stove. Now, if you'd like, you could dish this in a swedge to make it kind of round. I think it might be more comfortable to hold on to in some ways. Certainly gives it more life, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. I think we're going to call that good for the handle end. And then we're going to go on and do the fork end. Now I'm just going to point this, because it just saves a little effort later after we split the tines, because I'm drawing out both tines at one time at this stage. And now we split. You want to go right down the middle, and you want to work from both sides. So if you start carefully, see, that's not quite the middle, so because that's a light blow, I can still correct that. That one's much better. By indexing the chisel in the previous cut, you get things to line up and you don't end up with a bunch of chop marks. And you want to stop cutting up here. Now, the other day when we did our bending fork by splitting, we punched a hole first. That would be a valid option here, just presenting a slightly different approach. As this is blowing up in the air, it makes it a little bit difficult to... It's a good place to flip it over. Now we'll work from the other side, and I'm going to put a soft plate on the anvil too. Now the truth is that this would be much easier if I held it in a hold fast, but then I think your view of it would not be as good. So I'm trying not to do that. So that's actually starting to split there. So I'll fiddle with this instead of clamping a hold fast in your way. So there's our split. Could use a little bit of cleaning up, but we'll do that at the vise, which means I lied to you. We need more than forge, hammer, anvil, chisel. We're going to need a vise and a file too. Take the chisel and just work straight down to kind of clean that up a little bit and make sure both sides are even. Whichever side I cut the furthest on, I want to make the other side match, so that looks pretty good. Now you can do a fair amount of this just like that at the vise, but everything's going to kind of roll over if you do. So it's probably better to do most of it flat at the anvil. Okay, really I would take this to the anvil and flatten these back out, but I didn't feel like moving the camera or denying you the privilege of watching me flatten this out a little bit. I just want to get those so they aren't twisty and curvy. Then we're going to do a little filing. I think a coarse hot round or half round file is just the thing. It gets down into your cut. It is coarse enough to do a pretty fast job on the hot iron. And this is an old file. And yes, I'm dragging it both ways. Since it's an old worn out file, I'm not going to hurt it by doing that. And on the hot material, it cuts in both directions. So that's nicely cleaned up. I don't have any burrs that are going to fold over and make cold shuts. The rest of that refinement I can do at the anvil. So with our tines separated and filed clean, what I want to do is I want to spread them out a little bit to about 180 degrees flat across. Doesn't have to be perfect. But this gives me a chance to refine the tine shape. And some of that you can do here. Now be careful going too far when you straighten these, because you can create a little cold shut on the back side, and that'll be hard to get rid of later. So you want to be kind of careful. The goal is not to completely get rid of this little V-notch that's been created. You can, but it's a lot of work. These don't look quite like what you want. This is your chance to draw them out. If they aren't quite the same length, you might be able to draw out the shorter one. But usually what happens is that your chisel cut wasn't perfectly aligned. And then therefore the skinnier one is usually the shorter one, which means that you don't really want to draw it out and make it any skinnier. So you're going to end up having to fix this with a file after the fact. So that's about what I want. From that V-notch to this one, and V-notch to this one. Surprisingly, they're exactly the same. I didn't expect that. I think I'm going to round these up. You can leave them square or you can round them. It really doesn't matter. But I think I'd like to see that rounded, so I'm going to round the tines up at least where it hits the tip, then we'll shape them. So the same thing holds true. Square, octagon. And of course this is awkward because of the handle sticking out at 90 degrees, but it's not impossible. And working here off the far side of the anvil can be quite helpful. Hopefully you can see that well enough in the video. So those are kind of rounded up. Now let's go ahead and shape these. We'll do that at the horn. That's just generally a matter of finding a spot of the horn where you like the curve, standing this straight up and down, and then working it around, deciding, do you really like that curve, or do you want them a little closer together? And just fiddle with it a little bit. Right. When the tine is too close together, if you put the end of it out here and tap back here a little bit, you can do a fair amount of straightening. And of course these don't line up side to side right now. We'll take care of that. Forks are rarely perfectly straight. So I think giving it a little bit of a back curve there, kind of work with it and see what you like. A little back and forth here, a little back and forth there. So those tines are pretty much in line. And they are parallel now. Now before you do this curving and shaping or whatever you want to call it, if you needed to file these, that would have been the time to file them and then come back and do this. They're a little harder to file at this stage, but I don't think those need it, so we're okay. And at some point you just have to realize that it's done and quit fiddling with it. Two last things that I want to do here. I want to put a little decorative couple of chisel lines in. Make sure you don't cut all the way through. And this is purely decoration. You can also do these with a file, and I think we've looked at that previously. And I'm just going to do two little parallel lines here. And there's lots of other ways you can decorate a fork or a spoon handle. Very light blows that I'm using here. And yes, this would be easier done under the treadle hammer. And then the last thing I'm going to do is this cools from this heat. I'm going to put some beeswax on it. And I am putting beeswax on this because beeswax is non-toxic. It's a natural product. You get some in your honey sometimes. Some people like to chew on it. I typically use Johnson's paste wax, and while Johnson's paste wax doesn't warn you about any toxicity, it's paraffin and carnauba. It probably isn't going to hurt you, but I think people would rather not have petroleum products on their cooking utensils if they can avoid it. So we're just using the beeswax. Very good finish for ironwork. This makes for a very simple but elegant and highly useful fork. This is long enough that it could be used at a campfire if need be, although perhaps a little bit shorter than you'd like for that, but plenty long enough for use in the kitchen. And it's going to last several lifetimes. Overall, I'm 13 inches, and my tines ended up being about 2 1/4 inches. The mass that I left was about 1.5 inches, if that matters to you. But this is what we started with. This is our intermediate, and this is what we ended up with. And this one we're going to turn into a spoon in another video. This is another excellent beginner's project, but something that even people with more advanced skills would enjoy doing, and it's good to go back and visit the basics from time to time. They also make great gifts. They're good things if you're selling at craft fairs or flea markets or whatever, and if you're out demonstrating and doing demos for the public, a simple fork like this is a very achievable demonstration. And if they let you sell stuff while you're demonstrating, it's probably saleable. So I encourage you to make a simple fork like this, or get more involved and make a fork like this. Whatever you like to do. But I kind of like this style. It's rugged, it's heavy duty, it suits my taste quite well. I think it's time to go in the house and see what I can find to put in a skillet and cook me something with it. I think it's a little too big to eat with though. Anyways, hope you liked the video. If you can give it a thumbs up, I'd appreciate that. Love it if you hit the subscribe button. Stick around, we'll have more good videos coming. Share the videos with your friends if you'd like to. But get out to the shop, make something, whether it's a fork, or come back and we'll make a spoon. Do stay safe, and of course wear your safety glasses. We'll see you later.